tub that has a golden ticket line on it, which is just glitter washi tape. But when it gets to that golden ticket line, we have an all-school dance party. So, because we've all worked together, we play one song over the intercom. Whoever class has the Mountaineer trophy at that time gets to pick the song from a pre-approved list of songs. It's not free for all. They get to pick the song. We all, the whole school, have a 2-minute dance party, and then so that we all get to celebrate. This year, with Character Strong not being something new, but this year adding an elementary component. So Character Strong added an elementary component this year, which is brand new. It has 10 character traits, and some of them are different than those at the secondary level, which is great. It has a different name, it has some different looks to it, so that when kids leave the elementary system and go into the secondary system, it feels like something new, and not like, oh, I did it already, I already did character education, but that character education is something we all need, and so it looks different at elementary than it does at secondary. So how do we then also, in the past what we had done is we just recognized one character trait a month, and that was it. So if it was September and it was courage, we would just recognize courage. But you can have perseverance in September, and you can have empathy in September, and you can have, just like we do with our community ones, like we just got to honor, we want that with our kids all the time. So, this is how we decided to do that. Bonnie, will you get the light? Yeah.
My name is Carson, and I'm going to tell you how positive office referrals work. First, you do something like respecting people, being kind to people, having empathy, or being creative.
Out loud enough.
You know, Armageddon Ridge Mountaineer. I got a positive office referral for being kind to a new student. I wrote a note to that new student so they would have a great first day.
So this year our school improvement goal is to increase the number of times we recognize students positively. So our overall goal is to get to 600. If we were to get to 700, that would indicate almost every single kid in our whole school. So each time we do a positive office referral, we mark one off. And when we get to each century mark, we get a special report.
So hey Josie, how did you get to come down to my office today?
How I came down to your office today is by being kind to people and writing notes that make their day happy.
Why do you think that's so important for our school?
Why I think that's so important for our school is because it's super nice and other people will do it back if they want to.
Do you think our school would be better if people were kinder to each other?
Yes.
What do you think that would make, like, if it makes our school kinder, do you think it makes anything else kinder?
Yeah.
What else does it make kinder?
It makes your world kinder, your school kinder, your friends kinder, and lots of other things.
I kind of like a really kind world. And kindness is really hard to show sometimes. Sometimes it's really hard to be kind when a bunch of other stuff is happening, huh?
Mm-hmm.
You did a great job. Thanks, sweetie. Okay, so Cecilia, what did you get to come down here for?
For perseverance.
Perseverance. Remember what it means?
It means that I did something that is really hard to do, but I kept on trying and trying.
Yeah, so it's sometimes math hard?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some tricky, hard stuff to do in third grade math, isn't there? And you kept trying and trying, and when you got stuck, did you ask for help?
Yep.
Perfect. Is that a good thing to do? If kids get stuck, should they ask for help too?
Mm-hmm.
Should we just keep getting help and doing whatever we need to do until we can get to where we need to get to?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is showing grit. That's another cool word, huh? Yeah, I am super proud of you. Do you think other kids should show perseverance at our school as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's an important thing for us all to do. Nice job. High five. Way to be awesome, kiddo.
Okay, so kids get to pick how I call home.
Yes.
Oh, I love it.
Can you pick the scare option?
Okay, right?
Yes.
Hi, George. This is Alicia Jensen, principal at Ptarmigan. Hi, I actually have Kaden in my office right now. So he was sent down with an office referral from class about something that happened with him and another kiddo. So it has to do, well, do you want to tell your dad or you want me to? You're on speaker, Katie's right here. You want me to tell your dad? So he got sent down, because we have character traits. And he's actually being sent down because him and another student went out of their way to help Kaden. And so then Kaden went out of his way to then recognize that student for that. So Kaden's being actually recognized for showing the character trait of kindness.
Oh man, I thought I was gonna have to get ready to turn the snack out on.
So we really want to try to scare you just a little bit. So good. So apparently he had wanted to need to use the restroom, and a friend of his said that he'd take Kaden's recorder back to class for him. And so then when Kaden got back to class, he was so appreciative of the other friend going out of the way to help him that he went and took his class dollars that he's earned and gave it to the other student.
Oh wow.
Right? Yep. Pretty awesome. So we're celebrating with him at school. You're gonna get a copy of this positive office referral home as well, so you guys can celebrate at home. And then at school, we have a whole board that has all 10 of our character traits that we work on all year. And then we'll put Kaden's name under kindness and what he did, so that other students, when they're looking for examples of each of those character traits, can look up to see what are some things that they can do to show that character trait.
Oh, good job, Kaden. I'm proud of you.
Thanks, Dad.
All right, we love the voicemail from Mom, so if she calls you worried, that's what it's about.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely, you have a great day.
You too.
All right, bye-bye.
Good job. Yeah.
So that's what we're doing, positive office referrals, which sometimes involves terrorizing parents. Kids do get to choose beforehand. I've had some kids who are like, please don't scare my mom, please don't scare, and other ones who are like, it's never me that gets called by the principal, will you please say it's me scaring? So it goes both ways. It's just been super fun. The kids love it. We have one kiddo who has gotten called more than once, and now at this point is like, my parents won't believe you, you could just help them. Okay, good. So that's what we have for you guys. We're just super glad to have you guys here today.
Thank you for
Okay,
coming
thanks.
Thank you.
Some feedback that I heard when you shared your school improvement plans and we went over this. I just appreciate you picked some tough goals, and those were some big leaps after already having shown some of that success. And so I just want to say thank you for sticking to it and trusting your students, and trusting your families, and there's still a lot of important work to be done with it on your path.
And the kids really like the tickets because I'd heard all about them.
Tickets are a big deal.
Do you guys report out on the district page, progress, how you're doing on it?
On which, on,
Well, I know the first one you said, that one
For the
kind of
student
waits till
growth?
later,
yeah, so
But
student
the-
growth data just came out.
for last year, right?
Yeah, so it doesn't come out last year, so when we took the 2019 assessment in spring, that data doesn't even come out until October, November. So we'll now report out, I just wanted to, because we just got the data, it only state data, so we'll get we got individual school data last month, and state data just reported this month. So now that we have both, we can say like, hey, here's we are in comparison. It's a whole lot better place to be than be like, here's where we are, but we don't know where the bar is yet. Now that we know where that is, we'll share it out. We just knew we got to see you guys first, so we can share it here first.
Yeah, and I was talking specific about the other two, since those are the ones we can track, or you can track a little more easily.
The
Absenteeism and the positive referrals.
yeah, so absenteeism, we actually report that out every single day on our front board. So when you come into the school every day, from either side, you actually get to see that every single day, that
Percentage of on time.
So just real quick, I asked a question prior to the board meeting because when I see these little acronyms,
it's sometimes hard.
I don't know what they mean, and then I
Fair.
focus on what that is instead of the content. But, so, I'm, hopefully I'm not the only one that doesn't know what this means, and I did get an answer, but I'm gonna ask you to say it out loud.
Perfect.
What does PLC stand for?
PLC is Professional Learning Communities. And so that is that time that our grade levels in Orting, we have a huge gift, which is phenomenal, and it's one of our big four here, and I fully support that. And that's that time that they have every Friday when the students release for us as staff to be able to really work together and grow professionally ourselves as well as in service of our students being able to grow professionally. So that's what that acronym means.
Excellent.
We have a cycle that we follow, the four critical questions that guide our work, and the teams report out every week on where they are. And so if there's a team that's struggling with some component, they can hook up with another team that might be on the same question and work together.
Thank you for bringing in student voice and clearly anchoring this to the board's direction of college careers on life. And it's so fun to see how that really lives and breathes in you, in your vision, and in your school.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shake my head.
Next, we'll go on to reports. First one is the financial report.
Good evening, Debbie Christensen, Chief Officer with Orting School District. And although it is a prepared by report as opposed to a presentation, there were a few questions that arose during the last couple of days that I wanted to provide an answer to all of you. So with regard to our financial report, the first question that we received is from Director Kinsler. And she wanted to know with regard to the financial report, and I realize this is small, I took a copy of one of the pages. With regard to the financial report, on page 9, it talked about revenue being a percentage as 7.51 and expenditures as 84.9%. And the question had to do with why, let's see, wanted to know if both categories, the revenue and the expense, were being shown in different ways, because one number is so small and one number is so large with regard to the start of the school year. The answer to that is that when we present the report, and this is the September financial, we take the actual for the month and we add encumbrances. Well, we have encumbrances with our expenditures. And so on the revenue side, it's the actual for the month plus 0. And on the expenditure side, it's the expenses for the month plus everything that's encumbered. And one of the things that I thought helped me better understand it is 82% of our budget is labor. And so we of course want to have enough money to pay that throughout the year, so we encumber that early in the year. So really, it is showing that we have 7.5 of the revenue and 84% of the expenditures, but only because in being good stewards and wanting to make sure we have enough money to go through the year, we've already encumbered that. So they are being looked at in the same way. It's just that number is really big early on in the year.
Thank you for explaining it that way. That makes a lot more sense.
You are welcome. We have another question, and that is, I've got my notes in a funny order here. Apparently it's on the other side. I know there are 3. I have a question from Director Thibodeau, and your question had to do with the 40% budgeted for the PTR portable with 4,500 still encumbered. And you wanted to know what additional work we could expect for the portable with regard to that 40,000 that is sitting there for expenditure. And you wanted a general overview, just trying to understand where we're at with the portable. So I can tell you that right now we are not aware of many additional expenses, except for we do have $4,377, which you would note on page 12 of the financial report. We do have that almost $4,400 that actually was just paid for carpet for the portable, and so it will show on the October report as an expenditure within that $40,000. We also, there where I have to say that some of the things I didn't realize initially. So when the city says that they're sending out an engineer, I didn't realize that was a vendor and there's gonna be a bill through the city. And so we had that, we received that cost that we would pay the ultimately to the city for parametrics to do the services. So we believe we are at a point where there shouldn't be additional costs except for those two things. But the 40,000 is what you've authorized that we could spend up to should something else arrive like that engineering expense. That we didn't know about.
I appreciate that. I was just kind of an update on where we're at with the project is what I was looking for, so it's perfect, thank you.
And then I have a third one, and that is Director Kennebott. Did I pronounce your name right? Kenneborough?
You know, it
He's
depends.
gonna
I mean, if I was in Scotland, it'd be pronounced differently, you know, so Canterbury or Canterbury, whatever.
Okay, I will do my best to say it how you'd like it to be said. You asked the question about the general fund balance, and year over year, you commented that it appears the general fund is going up. And even stating that it went from 3.6 million to 4.9, and you wanted to know why. So we knew in 2018, that was gonna be really that bump in levy, where we were gonna have extra money before McCleary changed everything, and that went away. So we had that extra revenue coming in at that point. And then we also had a few things, well, I'm going to mention a few things that I knew off the top of our heads that happened to increase that a little bit temporarily. One of the things is that we enhanced transportation funding last spring. It happened in the spring, and so we were allowed carryover so that we can identify what to use that for this year. But it wasn't something that we were able to already spend on finding out when we were receiving it. Another one is that we were notified in the late summer of our final safety net allocation. So we know that we apply for safety net every year, but we want to wait until we know what the amount is before we spend that. So we finally got that money in the fall, and that in turn also increased that fund balance.
With new board members, do you want to just do a brief description of safety net?
Oh, well, that might be challenging for me, but basically, as I understand it, and I will let Chris or Marcy jump in if I don't cover it well. But safety net is an opportunity for us to take areas where we have provided services to students that is basically reimbursed when it qualifies under the safety net. So we spend the money up front, and then Chris, along with Marcy in our finance department, they put together a report and say, this is what we did, and they in turn say, well, here's a percentage of what you can get back for the money that you already spent. How's that as an overview? Okay.
That's correct.
But because we always submit for a certain amount based on our expenditures that year, but we're never quite sure what percentage we're going to get back. And this year it was thankfully larger than we initially thought it would be, because they do really good work.
Yes.
They know how to calculate all of that. We also carried over some money for our high school vocational program. We've got some ideas on what we might do there, and so we've carried that money over into 1920. And then the last part that also factored into that is we had some, they weren't specifically school-related positions, but we had some positions, for example, the assistant superintendent, where that was budgeted clear through August. And so some of our positions that we held that were either budgeted and funds went unspent, because of course we had a resignation and made a change on that position, or for other positions, we just hadn't filled them for a period of time, and so that increased the dollar amount. So those are some of the areas that contributed to that fund balance. Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie.
Any other questions? No?
This is also prepared by the non-discrimination affirmative action report, but there was one question sent in by Kathy that I think Debbie's gonna answer.
It's me. There are lots of items. First of all, we had the question from Director Mackin. And she basically wanted to know, as Marcy indicated, is this a report that we just do annually, or was there something that precipitated or caused this to be added? It is a report that we do annually. We have a variety of policies that ask us to, that give us the responsibility of reporting back to you, so that you know as policy setters how we are monitoring and implementing the policies in the district. So it was simply that, to let you know, to reassure you that this policy does define that we need to post our non-discrimination statement, for example, and it defines some areas that we need to put that out along with OSBI requirements, telling us where to put that information in our application and on our website. And so it was simply to let you know, yes, we're doing it.
Can we dig into the calendar? That also will show up what reports that comes out, when it comes out, so we can be prepared. If there's no more questions, move on to the consent agenda. I think we have questions on that, though.
We do. There are questions on the first item of the consent agenda around vouchers.
Vouchers,
Okay, I think I have several questions with regard to vouchers. 6 questions. 6. Yes.
So first I have a question from Director Madigan, who wanted to know who are we paying LifeMap? Who are we paying LifeMap Insurance Company for the life insurance? So which employees are we paying for life insurance? And we are paying for that life insurance for approved contracts and agreements for administrators. That is a life insurance policy that was The next one that was asked also by Director Madigan is with regard to U.S. Bank credit cards. So the question is, how do you know for who or what these lump sum payments are for? And when we do the reporting, we cluster or group the items, and so they were for a variety of credit card charges that were processed between September 16th and October 15th, a 1-month cycle, and we combine those all and put them in one payment, and yes, we do have the background information for who and what. Another question from Director Madigan is, does the SRO, which is our school resource officer, routinely have overtime? No, that has not been something that has been routine, although I will say that there has been overtime worked, but an employee in the state of Washington has the opportunity to take comp time or pay. It's an employee's choice by law, and in this circumstance, the extra hours that were worked were asked to be paid, and so we complied with that. And it was the first time that we're aware of that pay was requested of the Oregon School District, and that's fine. We had the work done. But there are times, for example, homecoming is one that Chris and I talked about because he worked with that directly, where there is some added support needed with our school resource officer. The next one by Director Madigan is with regard to primary election costs, saying that you don't know how it works. I'm learning too. But what I do know is that anytime that the district is involved in an election, we are billed by Pierce County for that election. So anytime we have something on the ballot, we will get our fair share as far as a bill that will come to us that we must pay out.
There's times we've been the only thing on the ballot, and that's a very expensive bill.
Yeah.
There's times we share the ballot with many others, and it's much more affordable.
Oh, I didn't realize.
Yeah, it's best to go out with other people, but if you don't, you pay
It's a lot.
100% of the bill.
Yeah, we were the only one time, and Marcy and I were like, whoa, that's quite a bill.
I have two more. I have one from Director Kinsler with regard to voucher detail for an SLP who provides contract service, and we authorize some payment for professional development. So, and your question was, do we normally pay for a consultant? What I can tell you is that ahead of this being approved, we did have conversations, just making sure that this is something that the district supported and really needed our employee to go to stay on the level playing field with all of our SLPs and our employees. And it was something that Executive Director Willis and I had talked about and felt that it would be important. And it does happen, not often, but from time to time. I did go back and clarify with our business services office that not specific to SLP, but for example, school resource officer, there is information even in that contract that says that we will allow some of those professional development opportunities. But it went through like that on the vouchers because it's not in the.
I have read that contract.
And the other ones, Martha's the same letter, but I think it's a different category, which would make it surplus. Would you like me to answer it, not since it's still during the consent?
Yeah.
Okay. So with regard to surplus items, Director Kinneberg asked, how often do we surplus items? Good eye, that is an extremely long list, and your question of thinking maybe we might want to do this more often is exactly spot on. We had not, as near as we can tell, the current administrators that we have in Morning do not believe that this was done with regularity. And so this is the second or third time that we've brought together a large amount of surplus. And we even would consolidate it even more and try to get it done in fewer trips, but we don't have the space to be able to organize and number and mark everything for disposal. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see one or two more that are also large like this. We've got a huge one with books and curriculum of outdated materials that we're storing over at the maintenance department. But once you see one or two more of these large surplus lists coming through, then I believe that we'll be back on track to have regular surplus with smaller amounts periodically. I think that's it for questions on consent agenda.
Is that it?
Yes, yeah. Okay.
Any other questions? Not hearing none. Entertain a motion. Wait more.
Motion to approve items 1 through 5 on the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion first and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. I just wanted to say I appreciate getting the questions to the correct staff early so they can have all your answers instead of waiting at the meeting so they wouldn't even know where to find those. So we can just keep doing that. I'm sure they would appreciate it. That way they can research it and know what are you looking for. There won't be any surprises. Thank you. Next one's the action items. First one is the resolution of the levy.
Yes, so every 2 years, as you know, our district runs a replacement levy for our educational programs and operations. And a levy, remember, is different than a bond. Something that's catchy and easy to remember is levies are for learning, bonds are for building. So this particular measure that we'll be going out for is a levy. And we'll have this replacement levy on the ballot February 11th, 2020. Our district, just to put the levy in context and show the importance of it, our district funding comes mainly from 3 big sources. And Marcy was just looking forward with me today. Next year, what that looks like is about 82% from the state and about 5% from the federal government. And so that means about 13% of our funding comes from our local levies, so it's really important. The laws around levies have changed. So before McCleary, it was structured really differently. So there's so many law changes, it's hard to help. I think it's gonna be a challenge to help our community keep track of why it keeps changing. So before McCleary, the cap around levies was that it needed to be at 28% of the district's revenues. After McCleary, so you may remember that the last time we ran a levy, the cap was at, for us, $1.50 per thousand of assessed value. that didn't last long because shortly after, the law changed again. And so the amount we were collecting, so it started at $1.50, but actually we're collecting about $2.17 because the law changed. With that law change, now the levy for this time around is capped at $2.50 per $1,000 of assessed value for homes. What you're gonna hear when Debbie shares the details about the levy resolution that we're bringing forward to you is that we are gonna be asking our community for less than that. So we're allowed to ask for $2.50 per thousand for homes, but we're going to be asking for less. There's some new accountability wrapped around the new levy laws. Districts need to receive approval from OSPI for how we're going to spend our levy, and we need to get that approval before we can put this proposition on the ballot. Also, after we spend, we need to report how and show evidence of how we spend our levy funds to make sure that it's all in the allowable range. So Debbie's gonna paint more of it. So that's just really a broad picture of levies, where they are, what the laws are, and Debbie's gonna drill down to what does that look like for Orting? What are we asking our taxpayers for? What kinds of things will our levy be? What kind of things will our levy be spent on?
So this levy is a replacement. So as Dr. Shepherd said, we already have one in place. The resolution that you have before you tonight is again to ask for that 2-year replacement. When we started looking at what that number should look like, one of the most important pieces that we had to look at is what have we been projecting for our revenue and our expenses. And our business services administrator, Marcy Bannon, has already put together a 4-year budget because that's part of our budgeting process that you may, those of you that were here during the budgeting cycle may recall. So when that budget was built for the 4 years, we used $3.9 million, which is the amount that's currently going to be collected for the levy in 2020. We used that as kind of the stationary or static number that we would see, can we balance the budget if we put that $3.9 million in as levy collection so that we have that local revenue to add to the federal and state. And we found out that with that and the use of about $500,000 of our fund balance over the next couple of years, that we could make that work.
General fund balance.
And so, that's how we got, we started with that number. And, but we did look at what would we need for some inflationary costs, because what a book costs today or an employee costs today, et cetera, is going to have some inflation. So in year 2, that's why the resolution that you have before you takes it up to 4.1 million. But the important part to see there is that it's still, we believe, based on our current assessed valuation, would still be about $2.07 per thousand, which currently we're at about $2.17 per thousand. And both of the years for this levy, we're looking at it, whether it's the 3.9 and the 4.1 being at about $2.07 per thousand. With regard to the levy, there's several different areas that we spend that money on. And I'm going to highlight several of them just so that we all kind of have the same context of what that money is being used for. One of the areas is transportation. They both end in
They're all transportation.
With transportation, we get depreciation money. And we can use that money to buy something. It doesn't buy a bus. It doesn't buy anything because the money's not enough. So we supplement with our levy to add to those depreciation dollars to make it a large enough number to be able to continue what we've been doing, and that is to replace our fleet about 2 buses at a time on the large scale buses that 8 passenger or so. We've also purchased some smaller ones, but that's kind of our goal, to keep that going with the replacement because of course over time you get a fleet that has older vehicles. We also, with regard to athletics and activities, so that'd be like co-curricular activities, after-school activities, $0 from the state. So levy is what funds our athletics and our activities. And so we use that to host those, and it not only pays for the opportunity to have that, not uniforms and things like that, because ASB chips in there, revenue from the state to pay for one staff member, so we can't operate a district with one technology staff member. So some does pay for salaries, but it also can pay for computers for staff and students, so that we can work together and continue with the work that we have with technology. And it also, I mentioned staffing and I mentioned technology, but we have a technology TOSA and a teacher on special assignment that is supporting the needs of our staff. And by providing that support and helping our staff members utilize technology like Google Classroom and other things like other methods like that, it in turn supports our students' academic learning and success. And another area that it pays for is safety. I mentioned earlier, our school resource officer. That is an area that we have a contract with the city, but that's an area where we utilize the money to be able to pay for those services. We also are looking at safety and security with regard to our Prox card. So you know that at some of the sites we have the Prox card, and I know it isn't fully functional, but this is going to help us continue to get there. But our dream, our goal is to have this available not only at one or two sites, but all of our sites, so that we can better control who's going in and out of our buildings and keep kids and staff safe. And then we also, as part of this, would be able to pay for additional professional development, because we're lifelong learners and we're ultimately wanting to continue that so that we can help kids be the best.
Professional development as a separate item, not as an extension of safety.
Correct, it is a separate. So those are some of the areas that we see a replacement levy being able to continue for us and support.
And these aren't things we're adding because of the levy, they're things that we have that we want to sustain through the levy, and we don't want them to go away. We just added 6th grade sports this year.
Right.
We're expanding those opportunities for kids. We don't want to pull back on that. We want to continue to sustain what we're doing. So that's what the replacement levy allows us to do.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but one of our missions has been growing student engagement within schools, which includes not just athletics, but all of those other types of, that you mentioned you were of earlier, but a lot of those activities that are keeping kids invested in the school.
Yes, and we have so many. One that I'm always impressed with, although it's across the board, we have them everywhere, but when I see OMS newsletter come through on email, and then like I keep scrolling, and there's clubs that kids have the opportunity to participate in, that's part of it.
So
It really
you
does
don't
help the 6th graders.
Yeah.
It really does.
And they were so excited when they gave them sports, oh my God.
So you have a broad overview now, and I heard somebody clicking away, taking notes. Know that Tara and I have already been meeting, and she's been working. We'll be putting a fact sheet together that we'll be sharing with you, with families, with the community. It'll be available electronically, but we're also going to have it physically places. I go around and have conversations with staff and community groups, so they'll get to keep that fact sheet, and it can serve as help us with our talking points as well. We'll have a mailer that will go out to all addresses in the district, and that doesn't mean all families. It means businesses, households, whether you have kids connected with the district or not. We'll have a real active website, social media, and again, lots of face-to-face meetings with the community and staff groups.
Any questions? This is the action item. Entertain a motion.
Is that a roll call vote?
No. There's a roll call?
Director Holland,
Aye.
Director Kinberg,
Aye.
Director Kinsler,
Aye.
Director Madigan,
And Director Thibodeau.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next one is career technology education.
Thank you, Executive Director Rabb and Mr. Thibodeau, Carlson, for joining us. But if you need to tag in Mr. Thibodeau because you're just the same, then
You don't want me speaking.
thank you both for sharing about our career and technical education program.
Yeah, this is the time where we present to you the plan that we have for the design and the delivery of the CTE program that we have in the district, and to have you approve based on what we presented. And we have the esteemed honor of having a new director of career and tech CTE. And the learning curve for this young man has been quite steep, and he's been on a road race to try to get caught up. And I've known Matt for a long time. I mean, Matt started his career in the same school with me, and he's always been a quick learner. He picks up things really fast. And CTE is a very complicated idea that has all kinds of nuances to it. And I have watched from the beginning of the year when he's kind of taken this on to just literally, I was talking with Cliff on the phone about some changes in graduation requirements, and Matt had walked in the room and it was on speakerphone, and Cliff and I are struggling over some of these different kinds of things and how it affects CTE. And I mean, Matt missed the webinar that Cliff and I just watched, but he already knew the answers. He goes, no, that doesn't mean that, because we could do this, we could do that. And I'm sitting in my office with a big smile on my face that we've got this guy helping lead the way. And we've got some growth areas that we can really work on in CTE, and this is the right guy to do it. So, so Matt has a couple of things that he wants, and there have been several questions tied to CTE, and I'm gonna leave those to Matt to respond to.
Okay. So yeah, thank you, Steve. It's been exciting actually to get involved in CTE as a former school counselor. Career and technical education is right in my wheelhouse. It's something I'm very passionate about. And I'm just going to take a minute quickly to explain what career and technical education is. The state gives us enhanced funding to provide coursework for students in our system. Predominantly, it's really middle school and high school, to create opportunities for kids to become industry ready when they graduate from high school. That's the real goal behind career and technical education. And so the programming that we offer here in the school district is designed to have kids go through a program of study. That's a big word that you're going to hear a lot about, that we start to focus on, a program of study that begins, we begin some of our talking to kids about that through our counseling and guidance program in middle school in 7th grade. We use a product called Career Cruising, but the idea is that we're helping kids get ready for college career and really pursue their passion and what they want to go after. This year, taking this on as a new director in this position, I came into a program where I had to identify, okay, what are our program goals for the year? What are some things we need? And I had a quick learn to do on that. So some of the things that I realized right away, we have one of the biggest obligations with CTE is we have responsibility to have a local CTE advisory board and program advisories that oversee and guide our teachers and instructors with what is relevant in industry. So the idea behind this is that it's the one place in schools where a teacher can become a teacher without going through a traditional teacher certification program. And we have a couple of those staff members at our high school. They come from industry, they go through a short training program, and then they are placed in the classrooms training our kids in industry credentials and industry standards. What happens is over time, once you become a teacher, you lose very quickly, especially in this day and age, you lose what's happening in the industry. Because information is changing so fast, methods are changing so fast. So part of that enhanced funding that we get is to keep those skills sharp for our teachers, because they need to stay up to date in the training of what's going on in the field. In addition to that, the advisory board, the main role of that advisory board is to give input to both our programs that we offer and to the curriculum that we're teaching in our what are called frameworks for our CTE program. So when I took over, we had dwindled down through various reasons, attrition. Some of our programs changed. We have had some staff members over the last several years that have kind of come and gone, or we shifted the focus of a program. So our advisory had kind of dwindled. And so one of my first goals for this year was to build that program up. We had to build our advisory board up. And so Principal Freeze, myself, and Renee Pauly, our CTE assistant, began reaching out to local industry in the area and just started making phone calls. This summer, Cliff went out to some of our local agricultural businesses and introduced himself and just started talking to them about some of our needs. And so we've established a board now of approximately 19 people that are from our local industry, and we had 11 of them come to our meeting on November 13th. So that, I can proudly say kind of our first goal is mission accomplished, because we held our first board meeting on November 13th. And it was great. We had an opportunity to hear from some local agricultural folks, some local engineers that work for Boeing, Baxter, which is a local company. We also had some culinary folks, local business owners, entrepreneurs, so it's just really, it's exciting. The other goal this year is then to begin to seek input from that advisory board on our 5-year strategic plan. Part of that process is we look at data from Pierce County and state on what are the job trends. We know that in Pierce County, health careers and STEM careers are growing, and the need there is huge. The other one that you're starting to hear a lot about is skilled labor. Skilled labor can look like plumbers, electricians, and carpenters. It can also look like the agricultural business is skilled labor, as well as some of the automotive industry, that kind of things, those kinds of things. So we're looking at input for our 5-year strategic plan to begin to get aligned with the way that the state also then evaluates the frameworks or the curriculum. And we're on a 5-year cycle with the state. So what we're doing is aligning our program reviews to align with our 5-year strategic plan, so that, for example, this year we're going to look at business frameworks are up for the state. And so what we want to do then is kind of look at where does business fall within our 5-year plan, since we're going to be looking at the frameworks this year in our business program. Does that kind of make sense? So, and then short-term infrastructure goals, and I'm just going to highlight a couple things and I'll get to your questions. We started an agricultural program last year. While in the state, agricultural industry is pretty huge. In Pierce County, not so much. But in Orting, believe it or not, we actually have a couple of local industries that are thriving in the agricultural business. And actually, the more I learn about it, it's amazing. And some of the things that are literally happening in our backyard. So the idea there is that our kids could graduate from high school with some skilled training in agricultural business and go to work right in their backyard and actually make a wage more than the minimum wage. So that's kind of one of our goals there. So to do that, we're going to look at, and Debbie alluded to this earlier, some of the budget in our CTE from our carryover, we're specifically trying to focus on the construction of a greenhouse to build onto our agricultural program, because without a greenhouse in Washington, it's very difficult to grow things inside in the wintertime, or outside in the wintertime. So we got to move that inside. So that is a project that I'll be working with our new facilities director to work with the city and start to do some planning on budgeting for the greenhouse. The other thing is short-term goals will be to explore further CTE elective programming at the middle school. We currently have some middle school programming. We might want to look at, for example, and this is just an example, if we were to build our ag program up at the high school, do we look at adding some ag exploratory classes at the middle school? And those are some conversations we'll start to have with our middle school partners. And then the last thing I want to leave you with is, we receive money from the federal government, very, very small amount, $13,000, through the Perkins grant. So CTE money is starts at the federal level, and it's funneled to the states, and then from the states to the schools. The Perkins grant, while it's a very small amount of money that we capture, we then have to be in compliance with federal laws. One of the new mandates that all CTE programs around the state are learning about this year is what's called a comprehensive local needs assessment. And to be honest with you, as I read it, it looks very similar to a general advisory board, which is something that I'm interested in how they're going to delineate the differences between the two. One of the key differences is they're asking for input from students and parents on that advisory board, so that'll be a change. And then in addition to that, they're going to ask us to monitor some data around special populations and enrollment in CTE courses. So kind of the gist behind that is twofold. One, what they don't want CTE to become is a place where those kids take courses, right? So we just lump kids in that can't be successful in regular coursework. And that's something they're really serious about. And then the other thing is they want us to be able to make sure that non-traditional pathways are available and promoted to students who may not choose those courses otherwise. So an example would be females enrolling in STEM coursework at the high school level. And there's a big push on that at the federal level. So because we take even a small amount of money, we're going to make sure that we're compliant with some of those policies and monitor some of those data pieces. So there's my little spiel on CTE. Couple of the questions that you guys had, I kind of addressed this one, how stakeholder feedback, specifically students gathered. What courses and programs are students and teachers or industry experts requesting that we do not yet offer? So that was a really good question. We have as a practice at the high school, we will occasionally survey students and ask, what courses would you be interested in? The issue with CTE is because it's that federal state, we can't just offer whatever students want. It has to fit within, the state has 6 programs of study that are broad-based, that are connected to 16 career clusters. And what it really comes down to is we have to have teachers that are certified to teach it. We only have space for a certain number of programs because of our student size. We have 830 students at the high school. So, if we had a 2,000 student high school, we could offer more options, but with 830, we are limited. So we have to take that into account for budget. But we do choose CTE courses based on what students sign up for. So there are decisions that get made about whether we can offer a particular course in a given year. If there's enough students don't sign up for it, we can't offer that course. So that's one of the ways that happens. The Skill Center, there was a question about the Skill Center. It is an amazing resource.
Read the question. Make sure you read the question.
Oh, the Pierce County Skill Center, wonderful resource, but access and transportation can be a barrier for students. Do we provide transportation? The answer is yes. We do currently provide transportation and plan on continuing to do that. The Skill Center partnership is crucial for our kids in Ording. I could go on and on about Skill Center. It's an amazing place. And we continue to send kids there and promote that program. How and when will you select or recruit for general and program advisory board members? I kind of detailed that.
I feel like you had 19, so that's a pretty
Yeah.
good size
Yeah.
board.
It's the same thing, yeah.
And so just what do you need from the community? And really what I would say about that is if you have someone, if you know someone that's interested, that's in local industry, especially in an area like STEM, agriculture, culinary, business, and skilled or technical sciences, you just have them contact me and we could run through our process to vet those people and make sure that they wanted to be a part of serving, we could do that. And in the CTE goals, it says to increase the present number of members to the General and Program Advisory Board. So the present number, we had dwindled down to 3, and now we're much more robust. And then the same report says to assess local needs. How is that done? And that's a really good question because we're meeting, all of the CTE directors are meeting with OSPI next Friday. We're going down to Olympia because all of us got a message back from our Perkins grant that said we have more work to do. Literally every CTE director. And part of that is just because, to be honest, OSPI is unclear on how we're going to gain the data. So we're having a conversation with them next Friday. The big idea there is, I think what it's gonna land on is they want to make sure we have representation, local and county-wide, from special populations, so low income, students of color, parents and students, that we're gaining information from those stakeholders. In addition, we are going to be looking at job data in Pierce County, so that's one big thing, job growth data, trend data for that. And then I think I covered everything else. And then our local industry experts giving us input. So, but who the leadership team will be that collects that data, those kinds of things, we're going to get some guidance from OSPI next Friday. So sorry, I know that was a lot of information, but do you have any other questions? I can take this.
I have 2 because of stuff that you shared. So when you said special populations, and you said, does that also include the special ed
Yes.
students? Okay, that's
Yes.
great to hear. And the other one was, you said that it wasn't all traditional teachers, they could go through an emergency cert program. So then when we declare teachers at the beginning of the year that we give emergency certifications to, is that group, or do they have an official certification?
So, I'll lean on Debbie here. There's a couple different classifications within CTE, and the language has changed in the last year. So now what they're calling it, there's one term called conditional certification. That would be, an example of that might be if we have a current staff member, because this current staff member, so for example, a science teacher at the high school who went through a traditional teaching program, they could become conditionally certified to teach CTE, even though they don't have industry experience, especially if it's an area like STEM, okay? And then there is, I don't know all the terms of certification, I'm leaning on Debbie over here.
Oftentimes, and I know it just changed this last year, so I need to look at that as well, but oftentimes they do come in under a conditional certification.
Conditional, yeah.
Even with the industry background.
Yeah.
So oftentimes it's conditional. What I think changed was the term, because we used to have differences in non-CE teachers who came in as conditional, could come in for, let me say this wrong, 2 years, and conditional with CTE was 1 year, or vice versa. And they've streamlined that, so, but it allows them a opportunity to come in if they didn't go through the program.
And then did they transition into certified?
It depends.
Yeah, there are some
Time,
steps they can
yeah.
take to do that.
They can go to like Bates.
Yeah, they go to Bates. There's a non-traditional teacher prep program through CTE. It's really, it's different, but it would be through classes that are at Bates locally. And then they take those on the weekends. And we have one teacher currently enrolled and one that had just gone through the program. So,
Great, I'm glad that there was something local to
yes.
keep them.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions?
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. Thanks, you guys. Thank you very much.
Got a roll call on this one? Would like to entertain a motion?
I'll move to approve the Career Technical Education Program.
Second?
First and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, thank you. Next one is lease agreements. We'll do senior citizen first.
Well, we do them as a cluster, but we do have,
Question.
we do have one question sent in from Brooke. Yes.
True, with regard to, so tonight before you as an action item, you had 2 leases. The Orleans School District typically has 3 leases. We have one that we are still working with the leasee to determine what that will look like moving forward. But the 2 that we are presenting to you tonight, we had the question on for the soccer field, which was one of the leases. That's the 22.9 acres that's on the Lions Field, that's on the outside of town, outskirts of town, and the senior center. And the question is, or the statement is, I understand these are public service opportunities, but from reading the agreements, neither of the leases seem to represent market value. And also there's a question as to whether leasing to them also supports our mission about the students ready for college, careers, and life. And lastly, whether the senior center is still being used by the district. So the response with regard to the soccer field, in addition to the amount of money that the soccer leasee pays, they also provide all of the upkeep. So they do parking lot maintenance, they do all the mowing, and so there's some other services that they are doing. And in the end, with regard to our mission and all kids, all students ready for college, careers, and life, one of the neat things about that opportunity is that we have boarding students participating in sports out there. That way can contribute as well. And then with the senior center, we do actually use that building. We have all of our facilities department, which is maintenance, grounds, and custodial. Maintenance and grounds actually have their offices there along with the supervisor. We also have our entire transportation at that location. The senior center actually leases 17% of the building space available. I hope that answers your question. Staff would like to request a motion to approve the lease agreements so that we can continue that partnership.
Any questions? No? Entertain a motion to approve the lease agreement between the senior citizen and the soccer field.
Motion to approve senior center lease agreement Soccer club lease agreement.
Second.
So first and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. And trust me, it's a lot to cut that grass. I said it that when the Lions Club had that cut field, with Marv, I was hot. Where you going, Stanley? I'm going home. All right. That was student rep today?
They wrote in ahead of time and asked to be excused. They are both leaders of the Winter Wishes program at the high
Oh,
school.
yes.
And they're feeling the press because I think it's tomorrow. And so they are Winter Wishes. So they are working on that tonight. So they asked to be excused because of that service.
All right.
I'm sure, yeah. And it's on board calendar to board members. I think it's on. I'll double check.
Gear it up for something?
So for board comments, the National School Board Association Conference is coming up. If that's something you're wanting to go to or if you want to find out more about it, talk to Bonnie and she can share information about on that with you.
Stand it.
Yeah, we're talking about much later.
We have our student character heroes of the month coming up in October, November, December. There's a rotation of board members who selected our student character heroes of the month. So what I'm wondering is, do we want to talk right now and say who wins January, February, March? Or do you want us to look at the rotation and just continue to build the rotation and propose a schedule and let you know?
I just propose to schedule everybody. You'll know.
And we'll just know, it's on calendars and people can pick up with you. Peace. And this is a little bit of an in the moment board comment, but today our graduation data came out and we've known that we've been doing a great job. Our high school team's doing an excellent job, especially focusing on making sure that every single student by name, they're really working to get everyone across the stage on time. The data was finalized and published today, and Tara, in all of her skills, put together a graphic demonstrates. We'll be sharing this publicly, but we wanted to take a moment to share it with the boys. You got to see what we're pushing.
Wow.
4% in a year.
Do we know how it compares to other districts?
Yeah, it blows them out of the water, literally. In fact, I asked Tara to pull a graph that shows all of our neighbors. Because I think, I'm not even sure if Sumner is still above us, but last I checked, they were the only one that around us that even came close. So the state average is 80. I'm trying to remember the state average, 82? I can't remember how they do look, but we're way above state and neighbors.
It's phenomenal, and that's 4 year.
Just as a comment, we should probably make sure that gets out there. Just ruffle salt.
Yeah.
That's so significant. I just want to, that straight line between 89.6 and 93.6, the work that goes into that for our students is tremendous. And it's going to be fun celebrating this.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
Congratulations.
Please recognize the team. That is an excellent job.
And we recognize you. I mean, not only is this an upward trajectory, but that is with a more rigorous diploma, because what we used to have is just graduation rates. Now we're saying, what's the college-ready menu? What's a career-ready menu? What's a life-ready menu? And the diploma's getting more rigorous. So thank you for that direction and push, and way to go, team.
Awesome. Very good.
Thank you, Tara, for putting that, working your magic. I just made that. She texted it to me during the meeting, and I'm like, we I think we should hear more comments.
It's like fireworks.
I know where to go, maybe something quick.
Let's go.
Alrighty, do we have any more board comments?
I have a few from our WASDA conference that I haven't shared with you yet. Just some takeaways from, we already did a bunch of sessions and there were some that I'd like us to work on. I think one thing is superintendent evaluation, especially with 4 new board members. I really want to go into January evaluation, making sure that we all have a shared understanding of the goals. And I think, Stanley, you've been there with in past reviews. I want to improve on speaking together with one voice, and the feedback we give to Dr. Shepherd is very clear and aligned, versus us having a conversation with her after the fact. I think we got a little bit messy there. And also looking to, is there an opportunity for the evaluation to evolve a little bit? I think we need to consider that each year. So I've got some notes for when we do it again. I'd like to continue improving on that. We've done a lot of work in the past 2 years since I've been on the board, and I'd like to just kind of see us get better and better each time. Yeah. The next item, and this was something Melissa and Kathy and I all went to a community engagement session put on by North Shore School District. And I liked an idea that they had been doing about hosting a community forum. I'd like to try that out. And they approach it with 2 questions. I mean, I like the simplicity of it, but one, asking community members, why are you here? Like, what motivated them to attend, what do they want to learn, what do they want to share with us? But also going into it, what do we want to learn from the community, and having some specifics around that. So just a community forum, and I'd like to reach out to North Shore and find out a little bit more about how they structure it. Is it like, coffee and cookies kind of event, or is there, a process that they use to follow it? But I thought that was a good idea that I'd like to try. And I don't know where exactly it fits in our calendar. We've got a really robust calendar, just as the district, but also as the board, and so we have to find a good spot for that works for the community too. And then we all, I attended sessions on bond communication, employee engagement, education equity, CTE, educational programming, so this was perfect timing for that. But I just like, board members, if you have any other thoughts or ideas or key takeaways, please share them, because we all went to some of the same sessions but different sessions. Yeah, I'm good, thanks.
I just wanted to share that after hearing so much about equity at the conference, I was really pleased in the consent calendar to see that we have a women's wrestling coach this year. I'm prior Title IX, and that made me just happy. So, good choice.
Any other comments? No? No? Do we have an executive session? How long?
30 minutes.
For,
Evaluating the performance
we'll be going to executive session to evaluate employee performance by 30 minutes. We're gonna actually go out, right? Yeah. And we'll come back, no action will be taken, we'll just dismiss.